Today's verse is 222, chapter 2, verse 22, and it goes, Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya navani grinnati naroparani tatha sharirani vihaya jirna nanyani samyati navani dehi. And the core meaning of this verse is, just as a person discards worn-out garments and puts on new ones, similarly the embodied soul abandons old and worn-out bodies and accepts new ones. So, this is one of the most beautiful and accessible metaphors in the whole Bhagavad Gita. Until now, Krishna has been speaking pretty philosophically, if that's how you say it. The self is eternal, the self is unborn, the self cannot be killed, and the self does not undergo the 6 stages of material existence. And now he gives Arjun an image that anyone can understand. Clothes. Everyone changes clothes. Nobody mourns a shirt just because it got old and it has some mud stains and it has like a few holes in it. No, that's not how it works. Nobody panics when they change outfits. And why? Because we instinctively, we collectively understand something. The clothing and the person wearing it are not the same thing. And Krishna says, in the same way, the body and the self are not the same thing. So here we are comparing the body to a garment. Vasamsi jirnani, meaning worn out garments. The word jirna means old, used, worn down. Think about your favorite hoodie. When you first got it, it looked perfect. But over time, the fabric fades, the sleeves stretch, threads loosen. Maybe it even gets stained. Maybe it has a few stains in the back. Maybe half of it is ripped. I don't know. Anything. Eventually, it will become unusable. But that does not mean that the person wearing the hoodie is like completely deteriorated. No, it simply means that the garment has completed its purpose, which is to be worn or to be worn out. So the Krishna says that the body functions similarly. Bodies are born, bodies grow, they transform, they decline, they perish, just like old garments. So, the 6 stages of material existence, we talked about this last time as well. There's birth, there's existence, growth, transformation, decline, and destruction. In our body and everything material in this world, it participates in all 6. But just because our body participates in it doesn't mean that the soul also participates in it. The self, it does not get affected whatsoever by the 6 stages of material nature. Like clothing, the body eventually becomes unsuitable for further use, and our soul will go into another body just like it's changing clothes. Or, if that doesn't happen, it attains liberation. So the next part of the verse, Navani grinnati, means the soul does not end. So that means the person takes up new garments. Notice something important. Krishna does not say the person just poof disappears. He says the person becomes nothing. The person remains, only the clothing changes. Likewise, tatha sharirani vihaya, meaning in the same way, abandoning bodies. And then there's nanyani samyati navani, meaning the embodied self goes to other or new bodies. So the key word here is dehi, meaning the embodied one. The wearer, the possessor of the body, the traveler. The body is a temporary accommodation. The self is the continuing resident. So, go ahead, close your eyes, and imagine opening up a family album. Or maybe that's just in these generations, maybe that's just in your phone. Imagine looking at that and looking at baby pictures of yourself. that body no longer exists. Almost every cell has changed. Your height changed, your face changed, your weight changed, your voice changed, your thoughts changed, and yet you still say, that's me. You do not feel that a different person was born every few years. There's a continuity beneath the changes. Krishna simply extends the logic further. If the self remains through all bodily changes during life, why should continuity suddenly cease when the body itself changes immediately? Okay, another question. Why does Krishna use clothing as a metaphor? Because clothing is something we will willingly exchange. You never become emotionally devastated or emotionally attached because you simply just changed your shirt. Like, why? And why is that? Why don't you feel emotionally attached when you literally change clothes? That's because you know you yourself are not your clothes. Krishna's teaching is gentle but profound. Our suffering comes from misidentifying ourselves completely with what we are merely wearing. This body that we have here, that's just us wearing that. That's not us. The true resident is our souls, the soul that is residing in our body. But that also does not make the body meaningless. Clothes still matter. You take care of them. You need them to stay warm. You need them to stay safe. You need them to stay comfortable. You wear them appropriately. You care for them. But you don't confuse them with your identity. You yourself know you are not your clothes. So if you can differentiate yourself in clothes, then you can also differentiate your soul and your body. Yes. Okay, so we're gonna move on from that because while this is actually a really important verse, there's not that much to talk about here. So here, according to Sankaracharya, this verse demonstrates that the true self can never be affected because it is pure consciousness beyond all material qualities. For Sankaracharya, the greatest problem is avidya or ignorance. We mistakenly identify ourselves with our body, with our mind, with our personality, with the things that we have around us, maybe our house, our siblings, our friends, our cousins, our parents, our families, everything. That's all misidentity. So that mistaken identity is just like a curtain that is covering reality. So when the curtain of ignorance is finally lifted through, true knowledge remains. And one realizes that the individual self is none other than the supreme reality. Now take in mind, this is Sankaracharya's insight, and you'll see why there's a difference between Ramanujacharya's insight in a while. So this is understanding that liberation or moksha is not becoming something entirely new, but it's awakening to what has always been true. The wave realizes that it was never separate from the ocean. The soul realizes that its identity is with the Supreme. Because the Supreme cannot be cut, burned, wet, dried, neither can the soul. And because the soul changes bodies like it's changing clothes, then you know not to put these two together, and you know that you are not your clothes. You know that you are not your body, but you are the soul, if that makes sense. Please tell me that makes sense. Now, the difference here between Sankaracharya's insight and Ramanujacharya's insight, Ramanujacharya fully believes that the soul cannot be harmed by any material force. However, he has a completely different conclusion when it comes to the soul's ultimate nature. So, for Ramanujacharya, the soul is eternal, indestructible, and conscious, as we've all been talking before. But just because it's all those three, that does not mean that it is identical to Bhagwan. In Sankaracharya's point of view, he believes that once the layer of ignorance, once the curtain of ignorance has been lifted, then what's all left is like pureness and clarity. And that truly makes yourself the Supreme Lord. But however, on this side, no matter what you do, you will never be identical to the Supreme. And instead, every soul is eternally dependent upon the Supreme Lord. Its greatest fulfillment is not becoming the Supreme, but its greatest fulfillment is loving the Supreme completely, fully, with no objections. Ramanujacharya teaches that liberation is attained primarily through complete surrender, or saranagati, and wholehearted devotion. Even after liberation, the soul does not lose its individuality. Even in this world, we are servants to the Supreme. Even if we attain liberation, we are still servants to the Supreme. That is what Ramanujacharya thinks. In other words, the relationship between devotee and God never disappears. Matter of fact, it becomes perfect. That is the point of view of Ramanujacharya. Okay, so go ahead, close your eyes once again, and imagine an elementary school student putting on a graduation gown. Years later, they wear a high school uniform. Later still, perhaps professional attire or something. Maybe they're working in corporate business and they have to wear that ugly corporate fashion or something like that. So each outfit, it belongs to a different stage of life. If you found their childhood sweater years later, you would never say that the child ceased to exist. No, you would say the child has grown and the child has moved forward. Krishna asks Arjuna to look at death similarly. The garment changes, but the traveler will always remain. Okay, so all in all, verse 22 of chapter 2 is one of the most memorable analogies to explain the relationship between the body and the soul. Just as a person discards old clothes and puts on new ones, the embodied soul leaves behind worn-out bodies and accepts new bodies. The body undergoes the 6 stages of material existence: birth, existence, growth, transformation, decline, and last but not least, destruction. The powerful illustration of the distinction between the unchanging self and the changing body, teaching that suffering arises when we mistake the garment for the wearer. Ramanujacharya emphasizes that the individual soul truly continues its journey through different embodiments while retaining its identity and existence under divine order. So together, these teachings, they reveal that death is not the destruction of the self, but it is a transition in which the eternal traveler exchanges one temporary garment for another. That's it. Thank you.